Hi, I'm Carol Costing, and I'm here today to take you through the Project Costing module in Share Financials 9.2. Meet Samantha. She is new to the state and will use the Project Costing module. Join me as I take Samantha through a quick overview of how project costing is performed at the state. So, what is project costing? Project costing allows us to make critical decisions for projects, to understand how project levels accrue income and costs, and to know how billing and accounting entries are managed. Let's look at some of the advantages of project costing. Project costing provides comprehensive reporting functionality well integrated with other modules. Project costing drives robust expenditure control, collection, and adjustment functionality. Project costing also allows us to create projects tied to a customer contract and then manage revenue accrual, invoice methods, and billing cycles.
That sounds great. But how does the process start?
Sure. Let's see how an agency applies the project costing module to their grants processing. Let's consider the following scenario. An agency grants administrator applies for a grant of $10 million to their federal agency sponsor. He enters it into Share Financials 9.2 as a proposal. Once the agency receives a notice of grant award from the federal agency sponsor for the $10 million, they submit the proposal and then generate the award through Share Financials 9.2. Once the award is generated, it creates a contract and a project tied to the award. Note that awards can also have multiple projects. After generating an award, the agency users need to update the attributes on the award, projects, and activities in Share Financials 9.2. Note that the contract ID is the same as the award ID and is used for tracking the grant as a whole. A project tracks expenses and billing invoices related to an award. The project ID, along with the project costing business unit and activity, is used to track these transactions. Let's see how the project ID is used. The project ID generated will now be used to track expenses. The project costing business unit, project ID, and activity ID can be found on the available chart fields on transactions throughout Share Financials 9.2. For example, Peter payable expensing a travel voucher for an employee working on the grant, or Frank Finance booking time for working on the grant.
So, in order for agency employees to utilize the project ID on their transactions, the project attributes need to be set up correctly. This includes the project type, especially if the agency is using the Share Financials 9.2 billing module.
Exactly. The project ID field on the proposal page is important as that value becomes the project ID on the award. As you populate the proposal, enter all the mandatory fields before you save the proposal. Enter the description, title, PIID, and sponsor ID on the proposal page. Enter the project ID, title, department, subdivision, and institution on the projects page. Enter the budget ID on the budgets page. This ID becomes the activity ID once the award is generated. Also enter the location on the location page. Once you click Save on the proposal page, the institution ID will be prefixed to the project ID. Once the proposal is submitted, no changes can be made. Note that the project ID entered cannot be longer than 10 characters, cannot include special characters, and will be prefixed by the institution ID defined at the proposal level. Let's look at some important points about project costing. The agency grants administrator is aware of the awarded amount from the notice of grant award. He will input the chart field values to assign the budget to the budget items. However, before any transactions can be charged to a project, the project budget needs to be finalized. As you remember from the Managing Grants session, this will go to both project costing and commitment control. Once approved by commitment control and the budget team, we are ready to use the project ID on transactions. This is what a finalized and approved budget looks like.
Thanks, Carol. That really helps me visualize the setup process. What happens after the budget is finalized?
Whenever a transaction includes a project costing business unit, project ID, and activity ID on the chart field string, the user must use the chart fields from the budget line for the remaining fields such as account, department, and fund. Once the transaction passes budget check and commitment control, cost collection runs from accounts payable, general ledger, purchasing, and HCM's time and labor module to pull transactions into the main project costing transaction table. The project costing transaction table is the virtual location in Share Financials 9.2, which stores all the transactions that include a cost collected project ID. If the agency is using the billing module, check if the expenses are allowed and extract all allowable expenses by using the billing, contracts, and AR modules. If the agency does not use billing, this information can be extracted from the project costing inquiry pages to manually bill the sponsor outside of Share Financials 9.2. Project ID, analysis type, GL distribution status, and BI distribution status are the important fields in the project inquiry pages, which source from the project costing transaction table. The distribution status helps users to understand the flow of information in different modules within Share Financials 9.2. Once the end date of the grant has approached, the agency will be able to close the project's processing status in order to avoid overspending the award.
Thanks, Carol. I feel a lot more comfortable with this process now.
It was my pleasure, Samantha. I hope this was a good refresher for you as well. You can also look at the Share Collaboration Center for more information about grants. Brought to you by the State of New Mexico.